Okay, everybody, this is Poetry Book Lesson 3, and we are going to talk about 3 specific poems that you are going to write today and will ultimately end up in your poetry book. We're going to talk about concrete poem, acrostic poem, and epitaph. You may get a sheet of paper on your desk and get a pencil out and get ready to write an example of these poems as you listen, or you can listen to the entire screencast and then just rewind if you need help and write them all 3 after you've listened. The choice is yours. So here we go. First things first is we are going to talk about a concrete poem. This is essentially a poem where the lines form a shape. You make a shape out of words from the poem. For example, you'll see you have this swan here, and it's almost like the line in the center of the poem or in the page is the water, and one part is the reflection. And so there is a poem about a swan, which I have a copy of in my classroom, and all of the words are the poem, but it shows the image of a swan and its reflection in the water, and that shape adds to the overall meaning of the poem. So you don't want to put it in just a random shape for no reason. The shape of the poem, the image of the poem, should enhance the meaning of the poem. Okay? But you can use these things to express movement, or to be ironic, or just deepen the dimensions of the poem. Okay? All right, moving on to the next poem. Now we're going to talk about acrostic. This is probably a poem that you've done time and time again, because this is the poem that usually describes a person or object or place, and it spells out the name of something vertically, and you begin each line with that letter. So if you were writing a poem about winter, you would spell down winter, and you would say, warm cocoa in the house, and something else that starts with I, and you go down, or love, people like to do that one, but that is a lower level way to approach the acrostic poem. The higher level genius of an acrostic poem is that at first people do not realize that you're writing an acrostic. Let's look at Edgar Allan Poe's example. I've highlighted it in yellow to show you that he spells out the name Elizabeth. This is a poem that he wrote for a lady. It wasn't published until after his death because this was something that he was paid to do. Poe is one of those authors who was a paid writer, as well as one who did it for love. And so some things he might not have done on his own had he not been asked to. So this was for a girl named Elizabeth, clearly. And he says, Elizabeth, it is in vain you say, love not. Thou sayest it in so sweet a way. In vain those words from thee, or L-E-L, Xantipp's talents had enforced so well. Ah, if that language from thy heart arise, breathe it less gently forth, and veil thine eyes. Endymion recollect when Luna tried, the sun's glaring on here, to cure his love, was cursed of all beside, his folly, pride, and passion, for he died. So, you can see, because I highlighted it, that it spells Elizabeth, but the poem is so well written, and the rhythm of it is done so well that the word doesn't exactly stop or start at the end of a line or beginning of a line. So, like the first one, when he says, Elizabeth, it is not in vain you say, love not. So you wouldn't typically pause on say and then love not. You read poems as they are punctuated. Okay? So it was really clever because there's not this hard end stop at the end of each line. And that's what you're really aiming for a higher level acrostic. All right, next one is the Epitaph. This is a poem that could potentially be placed on a grave, but it's not always meant to be. This is supposed to be may instead of man. I'm sorry for the typo, but it's not always meant to be done or or it's not always intended to be on a gravestone. Okay. Usually it is about a fictional character, someone made up who has died. And a lot of times they're written in a humorous way, but it's clear that the humorous ones are only as a joke. So they don't try to, it's not always done about like a real person in their life. But sometimes they'll take advantage of that, like this next guy, John Dryden. His epitaph is, "Here lies my wife, here to let her lie. Now she is at rest, and so am I." So he is pretty much just saying because she's at her eternal rest, so can he. And he's kind of joking about how maybe she must have prodded him along. It's sort of like a common joke among married people, it seems like, years after years. And so he's commenting on, like, don't disturb her because now I'm at peace. And it's a joke. And probably she was, still alive at the time he wrote this. I would be almost certain. This is the epitaph. So it's something that is just a quick little quip that could be on a gravestone. So it's not going to be some lengthy poem. And the whole point of it is to sort of memorialize someone, but it typically happens in a humorous way, and it's typically about a fictional character, someone not real. So these are the 3 poems we're going to do today: Concrete, Acrostic, and Epitaph. You need to write an example of each one, an original example, which means do not Google because I will find it. Please write your own poems. If you need to go back, you can rewind it to each section and listen to me talk about it again, or you can go back and look at the examples. But you will need to write one example for each poem, and when you're done, you will need to put it in your portfolio for when we assemble your poetry book. As always, if you have any questions, you can find me in between class, you can email me, or you can send me a message through the Weebly page.